Hello, and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin from the Modern Observer Group. And with me, as always, is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
Doing wonderful. How about you, Eric?
Doing fantastic.
Looking
Summer
forward to
is
the fall
coming.
solstice here.
Yeah, summer is coming to an end. I'm looking forward to some cool fall weather, some apple pie festivals going on around the country. I love those. So
Yeah,
all's good.
fall foliage. It's going to be wonderful.
So today we have a very special guest. Our guest is a coach, a consultant, and probably best known as a Super Bowl champion with the Denver Broncos. David Gamble, welcome to the show.
Eric, thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. So let's start with a theme that sort of ties in everything you've done. You work with a lot of businesses. As I said, a winning Super Bowl with the Denver Broncos. We're broadcasting from Connecticut, and a lot of New England Patriots fans seem to think Tom Brady can carry a team all by himself. But let's face it, you don't win a Super Bowl without great teamwork. What went into that Super Bowl team?
I'll tell you, you're absolutely right. People, they typically pick out the stars and the headliners and think that they could just carry a team. But there is a lot that goes into having not only a team, but a winning team. Those dynamics, they're deeply rooted, and they're really 100% aligned. And as you're referring to that Super Bowl championship team back in 1997, which was headlined by John Elway as well as Terrell Davis and some other notable stars, but it was really put together by and orchestrated by Mike Shanahan, who was the head coach. Right, he's able to put people in the right position to be successful. He treated everyone as they were the MVP of the team, and in doing so, it really allows everyone to have the confidence, not only in themselves, Eric, but with the organization and with their other teammates. That accountability was at a very high level. So the same accountability that was for John Elway was for me. And it really, bonded all of us, and it really allowed me to see the importance of the little things in regards of teamwork, in regards of preparation, and most importantly, having fun in what you do.
Yeah, that's so important, to enjoy what you're doing. Chip, go ahead.
Yeah, and I remember watching the game very well because actually I'm aging myself a little bit, but I've watched every single Super Bowl. And I was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I was born, watching the Packers win the first two. We had just moved out to Connecticut. And so obviously the Super Bowl that you won wasn't really cool for me, but in noticing because the Packers came in heavy favorites after having beat the Patriots the year before, and the Broncos, the only Super Bowl that I was ever present at was 1983 with the Broncos and the Giants, and that was a long time ago. But I remember just feeling so happy for John Elway, especially, but for the whole Denver Broncos team, because they lost, I think, 3 or 4 Super Bowls before that. And all of a sudden, Elway was getting up there a little bit, and they came back and they beat a really good Packers team. And then they went out the next year and won big too. So it was very special. And obviously the chemistry that you had to have, because seemingly on paper, the Packers were the better team and so on and so forth, was just amazing. But I just remember feeling really, really good for John Elway and the Denver Broncos as a franchise, because, I've always liked the Broncos too, but not that day. But so congratulations.
Thank you, Chip.
But Chip does make a good point. On paper, things can look one way, and when you actually hit the field, it's very different. How important is it that everybody's operating at peak performance and they're really operating seamlessly together on a team like that?
It's ever so important because the margin of error is so minimum, right? It, like Chip said, You could be going against a competitor on or off the field that is equally has the same amount. The product is the same, or the talent is the same, or even a little bit greater. But your margin of error is so little. So have that alignment is absolutely paramount to have everybody just working on all cylinders. You could have all the talent in the world, and we could all showcase different teams that had a lot more talent that didn't win a championship. But when you have a team that really believes in one another, everybody, again, accountability is at a very high level for each and every player, as well as the coaches. And they are counting on those individuals to step up at any given time. I think that is really the most important piece of this. And that year and that playoff run, as Chip kind of alluded to, we were wild cards. We were the first Super Bowl championship team to go from a wild card, in all of our games were on the road. So you want to talk about playing in hostile work environments, or having maybe the odds against us. It was that entire journey. But it really bonded us. Every victory in that playoff run got us not only closer together, but it gained confidence of the individuals as well as the team.
No, and I'm sure the experience that you had with that has parlayed into your business. I mean, I noticed on your website that one of your services is HR Diagnostics and why you need it. And basically what you're talking about is a team within the business, and going in there and picking apart everything that's going on there and developing into a better team. I'm sure a lot of that was inspired by what you did in Denver.
Chip, you are so right. I mean, to be honest with you, I think we all are really proud of our own company, especially if you're a small business owner. I'm sure you're really proud of your product, and you sometimes just you try to wonder why something may not be going right. So you can't really put your finger on it, and like great business owners, you kind of seek help outside. And you say, hey, what's going on? I mean, I got the right product, I got the right audience, I got the right business model, but it's just not formulating the way I planned. And this HR Diagnostic does that point. It allows us to kind of figure out what is going wrong. Is it the people? Is it your business strategy? Is it some history that we could just change, tweak, and alter to make sure that you're discovering greatness? And that's what this HR Diagnostic does. It actually looks at every company from a 4-point perspective. Number one, we interview all the leadership, and we want to hear the voice of the leaders of what's going right and what's going wrong within their own specific department of the organization. Then we do an employee experience survey. So we kind of get a voice of the people and say, hey, what's going right and what's going wrong? What do they feel is a point of pride, and what is something that absolutely has to stop in order to be more efficient or effective? And then third point we look at is just facts and figures. At the end of the day, we try not to repeat history, and numbers don't lie. So we really try to figure out your turnover. Why are they leaving? How are they leaving? How often are they leaving? And it gives you that business owner an understanding of trends and history. And the fourth piece we look at is from a public perception. We look in the Glassdoor. We look at all the different articles or different things on social media that's said about your organization, and we basically take an outside in look. And after those four things are gathered, then we end up saying, hey, here's the biggest point that you need to improve on, and here's something that you need to continue doing. And that really helps business owners just take a great reflection of their organization and get them back on track and really operating at an efficient level. And that is everything that I've learned in my sports arena, but especially how effective that was during that Super Bowl run.
Yeah, obviously you've taken what you learned, on the field, but moving from Denver to Miami, moving from football to business, it's a big pivot. And of course, we've used that word a lot over the 18 months. So how did you make the transition from football player to business coach?
Well, Eric, great question. To be honest with you, it was a pivotal point when I was at the ripe old age of 29 years old, and and I had 6 years in the NFL, which is in their terms of I lived a long life. And that's just, again, ripe old age of 29, I had to figure out what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And I looked at some things that I really was passionate around, and it was around leading and coaching others. I wanted to exercise my degree in business. So I kind of put those combinations together each year as I was playing football. And when I was ready to walk away from the game, I was able to pivot, seamlessly into the business world. I didn't have work experience, but what I did have and what I did work on and hone in is my coaching abilities as well as my leadership abilities. And then again, I was able to get with a Fortune 500 company that allowed me to leverage those skill sets and then gain that type of work experience until I was able to really look at business from a macro level. I experienced that for over the last 15, almost 20 years, and then decided to go off on my own and really put those skill sets and experience and knowledge and education to work and open up my own firm, which would be DG Coaching and Consulting.
Yeah, that's so important because you had transferable skills and you had the degree in business. We hear so much about college football players now who are trying to go into the NFL before they graduate. They're not paying attention to the degree. They just think the football is everything. And you've really shown there's an entire career, an entire lifetime after an NFL career.
Yeah, and the NFL and the NBA and a lot of other professional arenas are really, really honing in on that and really trying to teach, whether you're a first round draft pick or you're, free agent that made the team, that understanding, right? Talking about, how to manage your money, how to look at things beyond football. And I was lucky when I got into the NFL to have that mentor at a, very early age. As they said, the era of the football was going to run out. It runs out for everybody, including Michael Jordan. What are you going to do afterwards? And I really just paid attention to that. So each and every year, with my own story being an undrafted free agent out of the University of New Hampshire, I knew that era and that football was going to run out probably sooner than later. So I really did focus on what I was going to do afterwards and really try to, enjoy what I did for the moment. Be really proud of it, celebrate it, but really understand that once that was over, what can I do more? What can I do better? And that was really, transitioning and, as you would say, pivot into the business world and the corporate world and utilize some other skill sets that I really was really proud of. So that's fortunate for me. And knowing that right now the NFL, like I said, and the NBA and other associations are trying to get young athletes to understand that and really try to prepare them. Some of them are taking advantage of it, but unfortunately, you do hear those really bad stories of folks, after 2 or 3 years, maybe not even a year, making it and really struggling after their playing days are over.
So now you're working with businesses and you're teaching them a lot of the same things that, made the Denver Broncos a great Super Bowl winning team. What do you think is the biggest lesson that you're teaching your clients?
It would really have to be around paying attention to your people. I'll tell you, Mike Shanahan, who was obviously the previous my previous head coach, one of the things he really did that is just really a life lesson was, investing in your people, treating them equally, and listening to them. And you would think, you're the head coach, you have, all these big egos, which we did. We had the Shannon Sharps of the world, we had the Bill Romanowskis of the world, and some really big egos. But I'll tell you, he did a great job listening to what we needed, listening to what we thought was best in interest of the game, or at least our team. And I can tell you right now, as I have conversations with leaders, CEOs, executive team members that are the decision makers, I imply those lessons. Listen to your people, invest in your people if they are your greatest asset, develop them, and really try to put them in the best position to be successful. And then after that, trust them. It's part of my get, keep, grow model. You know, you got to get the best talent, you got to keep the best talent, and then you got to develop the best talent.
Yeah, that's so important. You and I have talked about this before. You know, your people are the front lines of your business. They're the ones dealing with customers, they're the ones who see how the customers are reacting to things. They're a fantastic source of intelligence to grow the business, and they are the most important asset a business has. You know, the more engaged an employee is, the more engaged they're going to be when they're working with customers.
You know what, Eric, you're absolutely right. And unfortunately, you have these business owners who, what I call, put things before people. And a lot of, even from the HR diagnostic will identify, is really trying to put people before things, right? It's really easy to put payroll and all these other expenses and all these other things getting in the way of putting our people in a best position to do their jobs. I think the good leaders really recognize that, and they've always put their people before the things, and they end up handling the things afterwards, and it becomes a better model.
Yeah, I imagine. Obviously, a lot of them have to learn, even though they're successful, uh, putting things in perspective. And that if the people aren't on board with their vision and they don't put some credence in their employees, it's just not going to work by themselves. I noticed that you have a degree in sociology and criminal justice from college, and I imagine that some of those concepts that you learned in college have helped you out too.
Yeah, you know, my experience in New England. I currently live in Miami. I know you guys were talking about the fall. There is no fall down here. I mean, it's hot. It's going to be hot all the way till December, guys. And I really miss that part of New England. But going to school at the University of New Hampshire and gathering that degree in those two areas really just gave me a great perspective on people, and my interskills of understanding people, and even myself. Putting that situation or putting myself in a situation, going to that school, I had a great experience. But really, the things I've learned, at a very young age, 18, 19, 20, when really starting to understand who I am and transitioning those younger younger attitudes of myself and really kind of becoming an adult, it really paid a lot of value in leading people today and really understanding some skill sets that I could identify in others, as well as those that I had and really master my own. So those were valuable degrees, I still use them today. So you always think about those that have got all these degrees and they don't exercise or practice what they went to school for. I think in total, when you go to school and you have these experiences all together, whether they're in the classroom, they're in a setting, on the field for me additionally, all those time management courses that I had to take and really understand on prioritizing, they all continue to pay very huge dividends in my day-to-day operations, in my day-to-day lifestyle. And again, if I had a chance to do it over with, I tell everybody all the time, would I go back to UNH and select that school over other schools? And I'd say absolutely yes.
So, David, you had mentioned earlier how your coach dealt with the different egos on the team. And we all know business owners can have huge egos. Before I started my business, I was in corporate, and we used to joke about the fact that the owner of the company had this brilliant talent for finding phenomenal people and getting in the way of letting them do their jobs. How do you work with businesses to make sure everybody's working together and not getting in each other's way and working as a team?
Yeah, Eric, that's a huge problem in not only small businesses or medium-sized businesses, but also in corporate America. You see that you you'll be reading and you'll find out that somebody exited the organization unexpectedly, and typically that revolves around a disagreement or teams not being aligned. Um, and really what I try to create, from a small business perspective, and those, CEOs or business owners with the big egos, is I try to teach them to create a safe environment, right? And a safe environment allows the employees to feel safe to say, hey, this ain't right, or can we have a conversation about, my time or what I'm doing? And that really comes from the owner. That does come from the leader of that organization. Secondly, I really coach, the CEOs and the leaders around rumbling with vulnerability. They're going to have to be vulnerable, right? They're going to have to create a real, not thin line, but thick line of trust with them and their employees. And that's where it becomes a safe environment. If I trust you that you're going to have the best interest of my organization, you trust me that I'm not going to deceive you, and there becomes a loyalty and a camaraderie that allows employees to say, hey, you know what? This is really not what I signed up for. And I do want to, again, allocate my time or my energy somewhere else. Or it tells the leaders, say, hey, you know what? This may not be your best skill set, and I may not be using it right. Thank you for letting me know. And let's think about you going into this department or doing something a little bit differently because you're just that valuable. And, you'll be surprised when leaders who, again, they may have a huge ego, but they want the best thing, and that is to have a great, profitable, efficient, organization. And when they're able to listen, and really, again, rumble with vulnerability, they get to really open up to see their opportunities, and a lot comes out of it. A lot of good, a lot of, long-lasting relationships, professional relationships, and that's really been my key to success, is having that conversation with leaders, building a foundation of trust with them and their employees, allowing folks to voice their opinion and know that there's not going to be retaliation or judgment. And that begins to really put some folks aligned and putting their best foot forward.
Yeah, and I would imagine part 2 of your diagnostic, the employee experience survey, I would imagine going over the results of that and having them open to listening to all that and doing something about it is key.
Yeah, I tell you, it's a lot harder than it sounds, right? Getting that survey, because a couple things happen. A lot of people, they want it to be anonymous, which we try to say it's anonymous, but trying to convince an employee that somehow their employer is not going to really find out it's coming from them, especially if they're disgruntled, and there is some history, that becomes really difficult. But, getting them to really speak and be candid, knowing that there's not going to be any retaliation, towards them, that becomes, really valuable for an owner to say, hey, let me sit back and I know what I think about my employees' experience, but when they tell me this is truly their experience and they listen, man, that does become really valuable. We never really single out names, but when we create themes, and themes is usually, generated by 2 or more individuals, 3 or more individuals feeling the same way, saying some of the same language, then it becomes, kind of a big signal, a big red flag. And a lot of leaders really take that to heart, and they really want to make changes. So that becomes a real valuable tool.
Now, you also do diversity and inclusion programs, which, we've been talking about this over and over. It's been all over the news. When you go into a company, how do you explain to them the importance and the benefits of diversity?
I'll tell you, Eric, I've been in the diversity field for many, many years. Believe it or not, back in 1991, I was one of the first. I was actually, they called it the African American Alliance, which was a Black student union at the University of New Hampshire, where I began to tackle diversity at a macro level. And, ever since then, I've always had a lens in diversity, and really just being keen to what people say, what I see, what people see, and having just great dialogue. So as being a diversity champion and trying to teach others the understanding and the equity behind having that same vision, or just at least understanding, it's all about the journey. It's not about, checking the box saying, oh, I did a computer-based training about diversity, about unconscious bias or privilege, and now I'm a diversity champion. No. What I try to explain to leaders that really kind of see at least some of the benefits, but they just don't know where to start, is really just having that conversation about where they are in their journey, right? And whether you're a white male from New England or you're an African male female from the South, and really talking about, diversity is just not what you see. It's easy and it's very quick to just judge on what you see. But real diversity work and value to an organization, it goes beyond what you see. And that's what I begin to tell them. I begin to tell them about looking at their policies and procedures, how they hire somebody, how they promote somebody, what it looks like to be the first of any in their organization, and not to stereotype, how to deal with external factors in our society that may want to make somebody feel inclusive or not in your own organization. We talked earlier about retention. We talked earlier about getting the most out of our people, and really the equity around diversity and inclusion is what I call, their discretionary effort, right? What are they going to do above and beyond getting their paycheck? And an employee, if they feel really valued and appreciated and included, they will deliver that discretionary effort. They will bring that great idea. They will work beyond the 40 hours that they're getting paid and enjoy it and be a brand ambassador of your organization. That is really what I try to teach around diversity, equity, inclusion. I let them know it's a journey. The first, my 1.0 training is really about getting an understanding. And then 2.0 is really about putting principles and practices in place.
No, I love the bullet point that you have under your training content, unconscious bias. And it says, unlock the full potential of your leaders by allowing them to look beyond bias and to start focusing on the true potential of their team. I mean, that's one of the biggest problems that we all have. We have this unconscious bias, and that's what's caused so many problems. And if you can work on that and just unlock the potential and look past that, and you got to work hard to make that happen. I'm sure you see that time and time again. But the more we do it for you in business and for us as a society, the better off we're going to be. And I think we are moving in the right direction. So,
absolutely. I appreciate that, Chip. And again, it's really, when you kind of talk about even unconscious bias, again, I think we're all, we just have to have an understanding that we all have one, right? We all have that bias, and where does it come from? And that's where the fun begins. That's where the journey begins. And I let them know that. And when they find out a little bit more about themselves and say, hey, for me personally, I have a bias about the military. And I never realized it was because my parents, my dad, who did serve for our country, had such a bad experience. He didn't want his sons to go to the military. And I didn't realize all those years that I had a bias on that, an unconscious bias on that. And it just really stemmed from the way I was raised. So like when we start to have those great conversations and somebody's like, man, I have the same bias about this or that, that's where you just, again, unlock who you are. And we talked earlier about team dynamics and getting, those egos. When you start to, again, rumble with vulnerability and let people be who they want and they can bring their whole selves to work, man, you're starting to create a great, great team.
No, with me growing up in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, I mean, I've seen several generations of that, starting with my grandparents and my parents, and then, looking at my sons, and now I have a new granddaughter and so on and so forth. And, looking at the younger generation, a lot of the things that were unconscious biases to me and to my parents and so on and so forth, they're gone now. I mean, people are seeing each other a lot more as one. And obviously, that's not covered enough on the news and so on and so forth. But just the overall feeling I get in interacting with people who are younger and going this way. I mean, my youngest son is a teacher, and it's just, it's amazing. So, and it's so important, because the bottom line is if we listen to understand with an open mind and throw out our propensity to judge, which we were born with since we were cavemen, that's the way to make things work. Take that pregnant pause between your initial reaction and before you respond. And sometimes silence is the best response, but most importantly, just listening to understand.
Yes. Man, that's so powerful.
And I think that's a great note to end on, because we are just about out of time. So, David, if somebody wants to get more information about your company or engage your business, how can they get a hold of you?
2 ways. You could always go on the web and go to my website, www.dgcoachingandconsulting, all one word, .com. Or you could give me a call. This is the type of organization that we really thrive on, building relationships, and it's with one phone call at a time. My contact number is area code 954-254-5161.
Fantastic. We're so glad you could be with us today.
Thank you for having me, Chip. Thank you for having me, Eric.
So, Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway for our listeners today?
Well, when I teach networking, I always tell people to talk about their value added and maximize your most valuable asset, which is your people. That's right there. And that's what you do. And that's the big takeaway for what you do and what all the businesses out there need to do. Maximize their people.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the big takeaway is how important your people are. No business survives on just a product or a service. It's the people who provide it. And that's where business owners need to focus, is on people. So I think that's the big takeaway for me. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch us every week at xvadio.com/podcasts. You can also find us on the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. We'll see you then.